See you later, user. Your mother was kind of batshit. A lot of people were batshit back then, dude. A lot of people were batshit. Plenty of people batshit. All right, I'm officially live on YouTube. If you guys want to come hang out with me and chit chat with me, I will be able to focus my attention on YouTube because you can type as much as you want with no character limits. That way we can have a conversation about shit. And then, oh fuck, I'll go live in a second. I'll go live in a second on what's up, Cassie? How are you? I'll go live on Periscope in just a second too. So if you want to chit chat with me, download Periscope, okay? All right, I'm going live on Periscope. Fuck. Jesus. Okay, so I'm officially streaming on a billion different devices right now. I'm not going to do any music, so I could actually monetize this if I need to. In case I get somebody confessing to a murder or something that I could maybe use for a later date. I don't know. Hello, Skater Girl. How are you guys? Oh, gosh. I'm doing good, Cassie. I'm doing good. Hello, Trash Panda. How are you guys? So here's how it's going to go. Today, we are talking about Generation X. Generation Strange. I think that's what they call it. What's up, Evan? How are you? What the frick is up, Rose? What's up, Aimless Plague? How are you? Real Time with Jason on YouTube. No, just search for Nola Thought on YouTube. You'll be able to find me. So your dad. Why don't you call in? Your dad was a boomer, or your dad was a Generation X? Why is this thing so far up? What the fuck's going on with it? There we go. Now, hi. It's like I feel like a giant person over here. Real Time with Jason is the podcast. Nola_Thought is the YouTube part of it. Okay, Trash Panda wants to come and hang out with us. Ad bitch. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, so you're an 80s baby, right?
No, I'm a 90s. 91.
Oh, I'm about to kick you out right now. What? So you're a 90s baby. Your parents were born in what decade?
My dad was born in the 60s.
Okay, so your dad was kind of a Gen Xer. What about your mom?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know? You don't know? Oh, okay. So is there something that you remember your dad telling you or your dad teaching you that might have been a little obscure that people nowadays might not?
My dad taught me all kinds of obscure shit. Are you serious? This man's nuts.
Okay, give me one of those things that he was just like, listen, you need to know this. This is one of the things you got to know.
He taught me how to do dishes in a certain order because he insisted that dishes had to be done, like when you do them like by hand, that they have to be done in a certain order. But that's because that's what his parents taught them.
Did your dad ever tell you any stories about what he was like as a kid?
What he was like as a kid? Yeah, he was a fucking terror.
A terror. Please,
yeah.
Please describe.
He shot his sister with a fucking bow and arrow.
On accident?
No, on purpose, and it went through her arm.
I knew I was gonna get some sort of assault on here. Like, I didn't know it was gonna happen this quickly, but I knew I was gonna capture some sort of assault on here.
Do you expect anything less from me or my family?
No, members? That's why I'm glad you came in here. That's why I wanted you in here like immediately.
This dude is going through like 15 million midlife crises. Let me tell you about them.
Okay.
So the first one was he bought this van, this big huge van, okay, and he was gonna modify it to live in it and travel.
Okay.
Well, he never modified it.
But he has the van.
But he has the van. So then he altered his midlife crisis and his new dream to, his previous dream, to buy cars that were, like, broken for whatever reason, flip them, and sell them.
Obviously.
Yeah, and that didn't work out because he had some shifty-ass mechanic working for him. So they stole a car or two from him. So then he decided to take it down a notch, sort of, and start buying broken lawnmowers and fixing them and then reselling them.
So it went from having a midlife crisis to getting a van and use it as kind of an RV to fixing lawnmowers.
Yeah.
That's called adaptation.
No, because he has like 150 lawnmowers in his yard.
Oh my God! Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, look, I want to get your reaction to this story, and this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about because this was a very normal conversation my dad had with me, and he came off very very earnest, but it was one of the most obscure conversations I've ever had with anybody in my entire life, and I'll never forget it. I was 13 years old, okay, and my dad was born in 1954, okay, so he was at the very end of the Boomer generation, right? We're out by he took me out by the lake. I'm 13 years old, okay. He took me out to the lake in New Orleans. There's this stuff called the Point. It's this little point, right? It's basically like a little peninsula on the lake, very scenic, right? He took me at like when the sun was going down, right after I got home from practice, and I was 13 years old. And he sits me in the truck, and he's sitting there smoking a cigarette, and he got me some McDonald's or something. We were just sitting there hanging out, and he goes, Jason, you're 13 years old. Why haven't you slept with anybody yet?
Oh,
and I was like, okay, I was 13, right? I was super awkward, like in my own body. I didn't want to make eye contact with anybody, let alone like, engage in that sort of activity just yet, right? Like I just turned 13. And he's sitting there, he goes, why haven't you slept with anybody yet? You're 13 years old. I was like, well, I think I'm kind of young, right? He goes, by the time I was 14, I was slaying. You hear me, Jason? I was slaying it all over the place. I was like, interesting, Dad.
What?
Interesting thing. And this is what he tells me. He goes, do I need to get you a girl? Do I need to get you somebody? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know, maybe I'll buy you somebody.
Oh, fuck.
This is my father
God.
when I was 13 years old. And that's only something somebody from that generation would find like, I'm going to ask my teenager if I can buy him a hooker. That's what I'm going to do.
My family was super religious. So when my dad sat me down to have that conversation, he told me that if I got pregnant, I should just not come home.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's one of those things that's like you're shunned from your family. Nowadays, everybody finds it like a moral obligation. Like if you shun somebody from your family after they're pregnant or something, like that's the biggest atrocity. And I guess to a certain degree, that's a good thing. But
he straight up told me that having children out of wedlock was like the worst thing I could do.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be the embarrassment of the family.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
And we had to make sure the lawn was mowed every Saturday evening before Sunday, before all the people from church would drive by.
Oh my gosh. Was he in the military by any chance?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So then we also had to go through regularly the house. And we had to clean it to like white glove standards. It was horrid.
That's incredible. Look, I'm gonna let you go for a minute, but hang around for a second. I want to talk to some of the people that have been on here. But if you find something, or if if you hear something that I'm saying that you get that you recall some weird military story that your dad had, or some other thing about your dad wanting to shoot people with bows and arrows and shit, call back in.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Trash. Shooting people with bows and arrows. I taught my brother how to throw a knife one time. But that's about it. Your first time in your life, Mr. Iceman. I appreciate it. So listen, now that everybody's in here, I'm streaming on a few devices right now. I've got YouTube Live going. If you want to chit chat with me, I could see your chats a little bit better. And if you want to call in and tell us a weird story, I'm hoping somebody born before 1980 can come in and tell me how fucked up their lives were before they were 15, because I want to hear some weird shit. Hey, Stevie Man, how are you? And I want to hear some funny stories, because the next topic that we talk about, the next podcast that I'm going to have, is going to be a podcast on the generations, on the different type of generations that there are out there. So let me go through those real quick while I'm on that topic. Let's look up those generations, because there's a few of them, and there's a bunch of different subsets too. That's the one that I was really interested in. Hey, Stevie, how are you? So the different generations, there's the traditionalist or silent generation born 1945 and before. Baby boomers were from 46 to 64. Generation X, 65 to 76. Millennials or Gen Y, 77 to 95. And Gen Z, iGen, or Centennials. The fuck? Like every decade they just like throw new things on there. 1996 until the present. Your brother was born in 73. You want to call in and tell me a story? I want to hear a story. And if you guys want to, if you want to call in and let me and chit chat with me instead of going through YouTube or going through TikTok for their character limits, you gotta download Periscope. Periscope is an app. Yes, no hair. Listen, man, I'm having people tell Gen X stories about y'all's fucked up childhood within reason and within appropriateness. You were born in '70, Iceman. You guys gotta call in, man. Let me know. Tell me some stories. Both your parents are boomers. Even your older sister's a Gen Xer. Yeah, my parents was a boomer too. I'm technically a millennial, but that's what I want to hear. I want to hear the story because baby boomers were raised in a really weird generation, and were like raised by people who were in World War II and shit. So they know all kinds of weird ways to survive in the world, and they pass that on to their kids, which usually turned into Generation X or early Generation Y. And I want to know some fucking stories. Your dad was a cop. So you might have some stories. Call in, Evan. Give me a call. We'll chit chat. You're so Gen Y, Cassie. I'm Gen Y too, technically. I'm Gen Y technically too. So if you want to call in, go to Periscope, look up NOLA_thought. It's the same name as it is here. My mom was 69, I think. And my dad doesn't really know either. Oh my God, really? Born in 1969. So that's technically that's pretty much a Generation X. That's Generation X. Mom is Boomer. I'm X. Daughter's Y. Yep, that's pretty much how it goes. Evan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Evan, so what generation are you?
I'm 90, so I'm millennial.
You're a millennial. Okay, so
yeah.
You were raised by someone in Generation X, or were you raised by a baby boomer?
Oh, well, both my parents are boomers, and then my sister, who is my dad's oldest daughter, kind of lived with us, and she's a Gen Xer.
She's a Generation X. Okay, so
yeah.
So do you kind of agree with what I'm saying about how baby boomers grew up in a totally different time frame?
Oh,
definitely. I mean, not just in age, but I mean the culture was just so weird and so different. And the stuff that they taught you was like, you're like, thanks. That would have been useful 20 years ago if that was still the case. But like, life is different now. I can't do that.
Oh no, some of the stories are my dad. So my dad, when he was in high school, was a black hippie.
Oh.
And he would wear like bell bottoms that were so big that he was able to go to school without shoes on, and no one would know.
And he did it on purpose.
He did it on purpose. He totally did it just like to kind of like mess with everybody.
That's funny.
And then it actually had gotten to the point to where his older sisters would see him like walking down the street, and they'd cross the street because they didn't want to deal with him.
Oh my God. Wow.
And it's weird because my parents don't mind telling the story because now my dad's actually about to be ordained as a pastor, and they have no problem telling the story how they were arrested on their wedding night.
Interesting.
Yes.
Keep going.
And I kind of want to keep it PG-ish.
Okay,
so
that's fine. I appreciate
this later.
I appreciate that.
But they had something they weren't supposed to have.
Gotcha.
And my dad had done too much of this thing, and basically, let's say, fell asleep.
Right.
And my mom had to call the cops, and basically my mom had to flush this thing down the toilet so that they wouldn't get caught.
Right. Don't play with firecrackers, kids.
No firecrackers. Not allowed.
No.
But at the time when my parents did get married, my dad had already had my older sister, and she was maybe 5 or 6 when they had gotten married, and then she's 12 years older than I am. So maybe by the time I was maybe 3 or 4, my mom and my older sister got into a fight so bad they were in a fist fight, and one lady from church had to like break them up.
Oh wow.
Because my older sister, her mom just decided that like she didn't want to be a mom anymore, so dropped her on my dad's porch and was like, she's your problem now.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So that's like Gen Xer thing. There's a story where my dad went to do family photos with my older sister, and she wouldn't like dress up the way he wanted her to.
Yeah.
Because she came down and like I guess tattered jeans or whatever, and he was like, "Get upstairs right now and change." And she did, but changed something even worse than what she was wearing. And my dad dragged her back up the stairs, threw her in her room, and said, "Change. You're not coming out of this room."
Wow. It was a big deal back then.
Oh yeah.
It was a big deal. So is there something that that your parents being born in that generation, is there something that they taught you that you'll never forget? And it's something that's kind of indicative of that generation. You know, like nowadays, I'd be like, you know, I'd tell my kid, I'm like, listen, install malware on your computer. It's probably one of the best things that you could do. Like that would have never come from the baby boomer generation. What's something that they would have taught you that wouldn't have been told today?
The only thing I can really think of is my dad was very insistent on not going to bed with dirty dishes in the sink.
Another fucking dishes story. Jesus.
He was adamant about that. Like, if he told you to do the dishes and they weren't done, he would pull you out of bed at like 11 o'clock at night on a school night and make you do the dishes if they weren't done.
What is with baby boomers and the fucking dishes? It's because they didn't have dishwashers back then.
Oh, definitely.
They didn't have fucking dishwashers back then. And if the dishwashers were left in the sink, it probably got all stinky and moldy, and they probably didn't even have garbage disposals, and it was just this nightmare. This nightmare. Oh my God. Well, Evan, thank you for coming in, man. Stick around though. If you think of something else, call back in, okay?
Of course.
Jeez, what is the deal with dishes? What the fuck? Stayed up till 2 a.m. doing dishes. Everybody's got a dishes story about boomers. So if you guys want to call in, we're artistically sinful. I don't know if you're still in here, but thank you for coming in. I love your content. I love your content. So I'm on YouTube, I'm on Periscope, and I'm on TikTok right now. On Periscope, you can call in. I don't know if you guys can hear the conversations that are coming in all the time. Same with making the bed in the morning. All these people, I swear, like there's something so militant. I bet you it's because the baby boomers were all raised by people who were in the military. They're all raised by people in the military, so they all have like this pseudo military upbringing. You know what I mean? Even if they weren't in it themselves. And if you want to chit chat with me, call into Periscope. You got to go download the Periscope app if you haven't already. It's basically live streaming for Twitter, and then you just add a guest and you can chit chat with me and we could talk. Your dad was military. He was an ex. All about habits. Jesus, that's so insane. Rose, you said your parents were Gen X with boomer mindsets. Yeah, I think that's kind of how it went. I mean, the millennials were kind of the generation where, and I'm extremely generalizing here, but it seemed like that after 1980, the military upbringing kind of went away, if not extremely lessened. I mean, it seems like everybody that I knew that was in Gen X, like I said, was either in rehab, went to the military, or wound up in jail or some sort of serious trouble or something like that, you know. So it seems like the baby boomers who were raised by basically people in the military brought that down, and then it kind of disappeared with the millennials. My great grandparents raised me and my brother for a bit, and they were from the Great Depression era. Okay, yeah, that's my grandparents. My grandparents was 1919 and 1923. That was my grandma and my grandpa. That's insane. I remember this, oh God. I remember hearing a bunch of the stories from people from Gen X and feeling really bad for the people they bullied. Like, you want to talk just about like accepted bullies? Like most of the Gen X people in high school, I mean, it was just atrocious. And that's exactly the type of stories I want to hear. It's like some terrible fucking stories. What's up, C. Jagans? Welcome. So, again, we're talking about Generation X stories. And why don't you guys, while everybody who's watching on YouTube, everybody's watching on TikTok, why don't you guys let me know what kind of generation y'all are from, so I get an idea as the kind of audience that I have that's watching right now. I know I got a lot of Gen Ys in here. I'm trying to figure out, I know there's a lot of people my age in here, millennials in here, which is from roughly 1980 to 1996, even 2000 sometimes. You're Gen Y. You're millennials, fuck. I don't know what generation you're from. So let me read the generations out real quick so you guys can identify yourselves. So traditionalists or silent generation were born 1945 and before. Anybody there? Anybody there? Kate Stravels, call into the show. I want to hear a story from your childhood. Or you could just type it out on here and I'll read it out if you don't want to download the Periscope app. But I'd love to talk to you guys about it. Silent Generation 1945 and before. Baby Boomers 1946 and 64. And of course they're called Baby Boomers because they basically had like a civil duty to procreate after the war. They lost all those people. My brother's granddad shot his brother-in-law for abusing his sister, and he wasn't charged. What was the generation? Your mother's granddad. Your mother's granddad. So that's the boomer. Oh no, that's the traditionalist. That's the silent generation before 1945. That's insane. You're a millennial. Okay. Yeah, and Generation X is 1965 to 1976, roughly. There's a kind of a 5-year variance on that. It kind of, like most people say, it goes from like 65 to 80. Millennials are from 75 to 96 around, and then Gen Z kind of starts between 96 and 2000 and goes to now. That's kind of how it works. Yeah, all I remembered about that generation was hearing tons of people get into some terrible fights, harassing people at school, beating up people after school, and some terrible shit that happened along the way. That's basically what happened. So what's interesting, I do want to talk. The podcast I'm going to do next is going to be I'm going to focus actually on Gen Z. We're going to figure out a lot of the questions about Gen Z. We're going to figure out why people. Let's talk about Gen Z eating Tide Pods. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about. The different types of Gen Z people that are out there. Like why? It could be a couple of different reasons. Because I'm Gen Z because I was born in 2000. Hi, Nason. My name's Jason. What's your name?
What's going on, man?
What's up, buddy? So let me ask you, what generation were you born in? Or what generation do you belong to?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you 1969.
1969. Okay, so you're technically a hardcore Gen X.
All right. Well, you said part of your story was tell you about my childhood story.
Yeah, let's hear it, man. You have something for me that some people born within the later generations might never hear, so you can enlighten us with some stuff.
All right, I'll go ahead and tell you. Well, first and foremost, as I was growing up, I grew up in a hardcore Christian family. Dad was a military man. Mom was a good old submissive, female. Listen to my pa. And as I was growing up, man, didn't see my dad much, but when he got back, Dad was, out of touch to reality. He was very angry. We moved to this neighborhood because, with his GI Bill, we got a house. And Pa and Ma, got this home, and everything was all right, man, because everything was right. Everything around us was going straight. And then all of a sudden, I remember when I was 9 years old, there was this black family that moved down the street. And I met this guy named Troy. Me and him was best friends. I loved him very much. And my father and mother didn't want me to hang out with him. And I didn't understand as a boy why that was, because the things that were going around us, I didn't understand.
And you were around what year was this that you made friends with this neighbor?
I mean, I was 9 years old, man. I was like, mid-70s.
Okay.
Going towards the late, and I mean, their neighborhood, man, it was, and their father was a military man.
Yep.
So I thought that my pa and him would, be friends, or because I was like, whatever, man. But my mother, man, she was like more concerned about me because I had a sister. My sister was 5 years old. She was more concerned about us, but she saw that, I would bring him over. And my dad was just like always upset and mad, and I never understood that.
Yeah.
And then, I just want to say, man, when it comes to what we went through as a family, I didn't understand why.
Right.
But as I got older, I understood because where my father was raised and the way he was brought up.
I understand.
And so my story to the youth is just because we love our parents and they have a different ideology, a different mindset than us, doesn't mean you have to be like that. Because now I'm a man that's married and got children, got 3 beautiful daughters, 2 sons, and hey, man, my kids want to hang out with people. They want to be with different cultures. My son right now is in China. For some reason, hey, that's where he wanted to go before he went to college and wanted to explore. And I was like, hey, man, go ahead, buddy. And I named him Troy because of my best friend when I was young.
No kidding. I'll be damned. That's a great story, man. I mean, and I don't think it's an uncommon one too. You know, I mean, we're kind of growing up in the era now where, I mean, the equal rights is kind of at the front of everybody's mind, and there's so much segregation going on the past 20 years that it's been brought into the light, and it's looked down upon to feel negatively about one race or the other, or one demographic or the other even, and it was a very very real issue having to grow up in an era where that was totally normal to have someone who didn't look like you as a friend, but not normal for your parents. So your parents having to figure out exactly how the hell they're going to deal with this situation that they've never had to deal with. In fact, they probably had tried to avoid it their whole damn life. So I appreciate you calling in, man. I appreciate you letting us know that, because that's something that not a lot of people are going to be talking about. I guarantee you're the only story that I'm going to hear about that. I appreciate you being brave and calling out.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, buddy. And I appreciate you letting us tell our story, because the reason I brought that up is because my dad, when he got older, that was him when he was young. When my dad got in his 70s, my father passed away when he was 75. In his 70s, he had a nurse that was a black woman.
Okay.
And she took so good care of him. And he cried. And he apologized for all the things he did and said in the past. And I looked at my father, and my babies were in there. And I got 2 grandkids, and I brought them in there. And we sat there, and we wanted to make a celebration of his death. We didn't want it to be a mourning session. And I learned about celebration of death through my black friends. Because funerals don't always have to be a mourning session. I learned that it could be a celebration of life, the things you went through, and the journey. Because life is all about a journey, man. And it's that dash in the middle, your beginning and your end, is what you started and ended. But that dash is your life. And that's what I want to leave y'all with, is live your dash, man.
Live that dash. Make that dash as long as possible. Make it count for something.
Thank you, brother. Y'all enjoy.
Hey, man, you have a good one. I appreciate you calling in, buddy. Boy, man, I can't believe that. Boy, that feels so damn good. I am so happy I got somebody to call in from that generation. I want more. I want more of it. Killer Cam. Okay, Killer Cam. All these people calling in I don't know. I get scared every time I have somebody on. Every time I have somebody on. Growing up in trouble, we call it homegoing. Okay, I did not know. And live the dash. Yeah, I accepted it, Killer Cam. I accepted it. It's going through right now, buddy. It's going through right now. Boy, it's such a good story. You know, and no one's really gonna. I grew up in New Orleans. I went to a school that was very, very mixed. You know, it was not a majority white at all by any means. But that was normal for me. That was the area that I grew up in. You know what I mean? Not a lot of people grew up in an area that had that sort of demographic diversity. It's still going through. It's still going through, buddy. It's just not. It's not connecting yet. Grandparents were strongly encouraged to conform, but the boomers do not conform. I think that could be. I think there's an argument there. I mean, it's just a different generation. It's not an excuse. It is a reason, though. It is a reason that that's the case. Hey, buddy, if you want to try, logging in one more time, if you want to try, oh, he says it canceled it. Okay, he had a story, but he canceled it. You try again if you want to come through. You wish you had stories to tell you. For the younger generation, the stories that I'm looking for is probably from your elders, probably from your aunts and uncles, some story that they might have told you when they were younger. So that caused a huge clash, parts of my family. Yeah, of course it. I mean, but it's an interesting point that you bring up about that though, because I feel a lot of, especially Generation X, was and the early millennials like myself we were kind of the testing ground for what an integrated society was coping, how they were coping with equality. How that was actually doing after certain civil rights got put into place or started being acknowledged, I guess I should say. There was a testing ground for it. So because before, growing up as a boomer, it was 100% segregation, damn near. And as they raised kids, they had no idea how to deal with their kids having friends that were not the same color as them. They had no idea how to deal with that. I'm really glad he called in. I'm really glad that he talked about that, because that's something that's a very touchy subject. I can't tell you how many hairs stood up on the back of my neck on that subject alone, but I'm glad we talked about it, and I'm glad I got him in here, because it's definitely something to be discussed. Let me see what my YouTube people are doing. I've been ignoring you guys. Jeez, my goodness. So yeah, let me go through it one more time. Generation Z is from 1996 to now. Millennials 77 to 95. Generation X 65 to 76. Baby Boomers 46 to 64. And anybody before 45 is technically traditionalists, or the silent generation. Am I still streaming on here? Can you guys see anything? What I'm saying? I know there's only like a couple of you guys in here, but I just want to know if I'm actually coming through. Evan, you're still in here, right? I just want to make sure. Okay, good. Just want to make sure my thing didn't cut out. Okay, good. Thank you. I agree. I thought we grew up open-minded and acceptable. Now my daughter's generation even more. Yeah. So it's become something like, I'm sure there's a much more eloquent study on it than what I'm going to say, but it seems like there was a huge sense of diversity before Generation X. Generation X started intermingling, but still hadn't perfected it yet. Thank you, Haley. I appreciate that. And then Generation Y, it started becoming a little bit more normal to have a familiar, integrated, and diverse demographic friends and family group around you. But somewhere around that time, they started looking backwards. They started looking over their shoulder and going, "This is fucking ridiculous that everybody was like this to begin with. Why were they like that? How wrong could they be?" So then there became, I think there became so people got a bad taste in their mouth for people who were born in that generation because of that, right? Because of the baby boomer generation having grown up like that and the ideas that they had of what normalcy was, So then there became this sort of backlash against it and a fight against it, where marginalized demographic groups were, I don't want to say protected, because they're everybody should be protected like that, but were highlighted as something to celebrate, and not something that people needed to be scared of, or people needed to avoid in whatever way, shape, or form. And of course, the more generations that progressed, the more those ideals went away. And of course, there's going to be pockets of that everywhere. Of course, there's going to be somebody who hates somebody somewhere, no matter what time it is. But the majority of the people started lessening up on that idea. Her gen is so accepting now. I feel like I have an outdated thinking and trying to adjust. I think that's a normal thing to do. I look at people now. You can ask me. I was born in 1986. I look at people who were born in 2000, and I have almost nothing in common with them. And there's a few people who. What's up, C. Jaggins? Welcome back. There's a few people who I'll identify with, but that they're the minority. They are a minority of people, because I have kind of obscure thinking. I do not consider myself a young thinker. I live in a commune house with a diverse group. brought into light and we were getting better. Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, I'll tell you something that my mom said to me, because my mom likes to listen to the volume on her TV at 90, and I swear she's going deaf, and every time I go over there, I'm like, Mom, you need to get your hearing checked out. You're fucking losing your ears. And she's like, listen, let me tell you something, Jason. She goes, I don't, it's like, it's not that I'm getting hard of hearing. It's just that as I got older, I started only listening to things that matter. And I was like, are you telling me that I don't fucking matter, Mom, because you never listen to me? My dog is here, everybody. I don't know if anybody noticed. My dog has entered the fucking room. So, you know how hard it is to record a podcast with a dog like that taps around on these damn floors? Drives me nuts. Drives me absolutely nuts. Oh, you're a 67 Gen Xer. Okay. See, I like Gen X. That's why I made that video. All the people that stood up for me I know, Jesus, it drives me fucking insane sometimes. And his nails are clipped. His nails are fine. You're Gen X, raised by great generation parents who has boomer siblings. I think like a millennial and act like a zoomer. 1977 Gen X. Yes, 1977 is Gen X. And 1977 is kind of like it's kind of the towards the end of the Gen X generation, but it's still like there's like a 75 to 85. That's kind of a weird generation. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people who were born like in 85 who have baby boomer parents, and there could be someone born in 1975 that had Generation X parents. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's kind of what we're going to go into. The next topic of conversation that we have, I'm gonna talk about those like I don't want to call them swing states, but it's kind of a swing generation. There's like a 5 to 10 year gap on some generations that are completely individual from everybody else, because they're not one, they're not the other. They're very weird. Yeah, embrace the weird. Can't believe I said that. Yeah, they're towards the tail end of it, just like that. So, but I want to talk about Generation Z for a second. I'm going to give you guys some information that I found a little while ago, because there's types of Generation Z. The 3 types of Generation Z. You're 1969 Gen Xer. My parents were born in World War II. Yeah, so that was my grandparents. Again, I'm Gen Y, so that totally makes sense. And if you guys want to talk, by the way, I'm streaming on a couple devices right now, so I'm on YouTube right now if you want to chit chat with me, even though I'm kind of neglecting my people. You grew up in Oakland, California. All I knew was diversity. I feel the same way, Peter. You know, and I was lucky enough to grow up in an area that was very diverse. I mean, did they have pockets of racism? Absolutely, everybody does. But I grew up in New Orleans, where, you know, they didn't have like, you know, I mean, my best friend was Alonzo Jackson when I was in 2nd grade. You know, I didn't know the difference between us. I just thought he was just another kid. In fact, I really liked him because he was the fastest kid in school, to be honest with you, and I wanted to learn how to run fast, and he taught me how to run fast. Okay, that's what happened, and then we became best friends. But yeah, a lot of people were not privileged enough to grow up in a very diverse community, or were not raised by people who were raised in a diverse area. They were raised in very segregated areas. In fact, people are still self-segregating. I worked in real estate in DFW for 6 years. The amount of self-segregation that I hear between all races, all creeds, all religions, all orientations is sickening. It pisses me off. But that's a whole nother thing. So let me tell you about the 3 types of Generation Z Naruto runners. That's exactly what I was going to say. The first type of Generation Z is Naruto runners. The second type is weebs. The third... Yeah, I'm joking. No. Okay, so here are the 3 types. The 3 types are digital orphans, digital exiles, and digital heirs, okay? Digital orphans are growing up in families where parents see technology as the new normal, most likely at the expense of having connection to one another. Quote, these kids are online, but they're raising themselves. That's what I call digital orphans. Digital orphans will grow up much like millennials. So again, that's digital orphans. Digital orphans are raising themselves because their parents aren't paying attention to them. TikTok. Their parents aren't paying attention to them. and they're being connected with one another based on their online exposure. Okay. The next one is digital exiles, are families that have deliberately turned off screens where parents keep their kids offline as much as possible. In theory, these kids are being raised having a lot of offline experience than their techie peers. But they may struggle to find their own way online as adults in the same way Gen Xers did. You see why I want to talk about this? And then the third one is digital heirs, having parents who embraced the technology, but who are actively guiding their kids' entry into the digital world. These parents see tech as a central piece of their kids' lives, but they also pay attention to the concerns of excessive tech use. Digital heirs are unlike any other generation we've seen before. They're the first true generation of second generation internet users. Okay, so that's like the true Gen Z, right? That's like the hybrid version, right? That's people saying, listen, we have technology, but we can't abuse it. Okay, and they're also the people being raised by people like us who had the internet, right? The digital orphans are the people who eat Tide Pods. The digital exiles are people like my brother who use a freaking map to travel 1,800 miles across the United States rather than us. Yes, a digital divide is forming. Absolutely. There are many people out there. I mean, because you got people like, that have seen the beginning of everything. They've seen... Okay, so my nieces are digital heirs. Yeah, so they're people. Okay, digital heirs are the responsible ones. That's kind of how I'm interpreting it, right? They're responsible enough to go, listen, we need to use it. It's not going away. We need to embrace it as much as possible, but we also need to be responsible about our screen time, right? We need to be responsible how long we're going to be online, what kind of apps that we're going to be using. Are they informational? And to a sense, I mean, anybody born in the millennial generation can agree with me. Do you guys remember? Before it was screen times, it was TV, right? When's the last time you heard about TV being bad for you? No one talks about TV being bad for you nowadays. TV is like, what's TV? TV's on my fucking phone now. It's the internet that's the thing. You'd still be lost. I know, I couldn't use a fucking map either, dude. I have no idea. But I remember when we were kids, I had 4 hours a week I could watch TV. 4 hours a week. That was my limit, which is basically a half an hour a day. I got one fucking show. I got 1 half-hour show a day. After school, I'd watch my show, homework, bed. That was how it worked. Restructure the economic classes? Could be. Okay, so what about Gen X who taught their kids? So that's the millennial generation. So there's something called Zillennials. Right? Those are the ones that were born closer towards 1992 to 1998, those kids. Those kids could probably be compared to the digital heirs as well. That sounds like a digital heir as well, much like the Generation Z digital heirs. But I thought it was real interesting, right? Because we're also quickly to shit all over baby boomers in Generation Z because they're either too old or too young. The only people that rise on top are Gen Y and Gen X. Although I don't disagree with that wholeheartedly, because I think we've got a lot of the we've got enough motivation and knowledge and diverse thinking to be able to do a lot, Gen X and Y, okay? But that doesn't mean we have to discount everybody else, right? So that's what I'm trying to do by this. I'm trying to let everybody know that, listen, people who are a lot like Gen X, a lot like the digital exiles, right? Those are the people who have to find their way online because they started out not having it at all. I'm the oldest, and I got half an hour a day. My youngest brother had a TV in his room. 9 years old, 9 years apart. It amazes me. Yep, I agree, man. I agree. That's exactly what I have. I don't need to. If you want to tell me the year you were born, I'd appreciate it. But if not, C. Jagans, can you tell me what decade you were born in, just so I can get an idea, so I can kind of get some relativity for that? 1984. So I was 86. So you get what I'm saying, right? You get what I'm saying? There was so much shit about TV back then. So much shit about TV. Everybody shit on TV. If you watch too much TV, you get stupid. That's basically what happened. Generation 91. 91 is basically the end of the older millennials. Okay, so the older millennials are basically from like 1982 to 1992. Okay, 82 to 92 is the older millennials. Yeah, it rots your brain. I could only watch Discovery Channel, and I'm glad I did because I know some weird shit about animals specifically because of that. Was that MTV was the devil? Absolutely. So, but the millennials technically ends around 96, but also as late as 2000. So from like 96 to 2000 is a weird group, just like 80 to 85 is a weird group. You know what I mean? My sister claims that people raised. Wait, what is it saying? My sister claims the people that raised me and my younger sisters didn't raise her. Oh, it's a very good case. That's a very Speaking of knowing weird shit about Discovery Channel, did everybody know that every 7 years, by the time 7 years has lapsed, every cell in your body has completely been renewed. It's been completely lapsed over. So you're literally a completely different person every 7 years. So if you were raised by someone 7 years later, you kind of were raised by different people, not just culturally either, but physically too. You didn't get your first phone until you were 13. When did everybody? That's a good question. It's a good statement, Haley. When did everybody get their first phone? I was 14 years old. When did everybody get their first cell phone? Dude, I remember my first email when I was in high school. You were 18, Turnberry? So you're older than me. I wasn't allowed until I was 17. Yeah, I was 14. Like, they were around, but it was just like, you were 15. Who ran up their dad's prodigy bill? You're not saying Moon Whiskers? Okay. You were 18, 13, Nextel, 12, 16 if you're correct. I had to wait to college. So we're all within about 10 years of each other. That's nice. Periscope won't download? Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. Hey, Bailey, what's up? It's okay. I'm about to end it in a second anyway. Hello, Maxi fan. Welcome, guys. So, yeah, let me go ahead and sum up everything. So, what did we learn today? We learned that I'm staying away from baby boomers as much as possible because I feel like I'm just going to get canceled if I say baby boomers have something good to offer, even though they do. But that's definitely something that's going to happen on the podcast. We're going to go into it more often. I spoke a lot about Gen X today, and I spoke a lot about Gen Z. On the podcast that I'm going to do next week, or the one that I'm going to be working on, we're going to talk about the millennials, the Z-millennials a lot. The people like myself, because I have something to relate to that, I guess. And I've kind of always thought that I was kind of out of place. I'm like in between the people. Like when people call people millennials, I'm like, yeah, fuck those millennials. They don't know what the hell they're talking. Like I didn't feel like I was one of them, but I also didn't identify with people who were born in Gen X because I was a lot more gentle than Gen X people. Gen X people were fucking savages. But we're also going to talk about baby boomers, why they think the way they do, what made them the way they are, what good that they've done for the world. We're going to talk about Gen X, Generation Y, and a couple of types of Generation Z that we just went over, which are really interesting to me. Baby boomers offered music. Well, I mean, it's like, music died with the CD, man. As soon as the CD came out, music was fucking done, man. As soon as they were able to mass produce CDs and make them sound really good and records went off, we could do a whole damn show on when music died, man. So, for those who are interested, I have one episode up right now where it's basically just a chit chat like this of dreams. We talked about dreams, what people think dreams mean, a couple of dreams that people have, recurring dreams, sleep paralysis stuff, night terrors and stuff like that. Thank you, Haley. And the episode that I have out right now is called A World Without Advertising. We talk about what the world would be like without billboards. Riveting, I know. It's actually really good. It's actually a really good one, and I'm very proud of it. And that one is my first official one. There's a demo with the dreams, and then there's that one. And it's called Real Time with Jason. Real Time with Jason. It's Jason with the Y. I'm actually really proud of it because I have music in it. It sounds legit. I have a decent microphone that goes with it. And if you guys appreciate seeing me and hearing what I have to say and doing all this kind of live streaming stuff and chit chat with you guys. If you appreciate it and you want to show some appreciation, there is a way to be a sponsor on that show. But if not, you listening to it and sharing it is almost more than I could ask because it does wonders for me. Rating it is amazing. Putting a review up there, but just listening to it. If you just listen to it and let me know your feedback, it's worth more than money because this is what I want to do. I'm going to be in voice acting. I'm going to be in radio. I'm going to be in podcasting, whether it comes hell or high water. I did post it on all social media. I put that shit on Instagram. It's on my Facebook for my friends who don't give a shit about what I'm doing. Yeah, I gotta say, it's really funny to have like over 100,000 followers on TikTok, and then I'll post like something that I'm doing, and someone's like, what the fuck is this? What, you do a podcast? I'm like, yeah, fucker. Of course I do. Kiss my ass. That's what you get for not following me. What's it loaded to? So it's, are you talking about the podcast? Podcast is anywhere you can find podcasts. It's literally on, here, I'm gonna read all the ways you can find it. It's on Spotify and it's on Apple Podcasts. Those are the two most popular ones. But it's also, there's an Overcast one. There's Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify. It's really everywhere. Like even if you just search Real Time with Jason podcast in Google, it pops up. Thank you, Haley. I appreciate that. It pops up and you can just listen to it on Google. You don't need to download any app. Just search for Real Time with Jason with a Y, podcast. Real Time with Jason podcast, and it'll pop up as one of the suggestions. You can listen to it right there. It's also on Spotify. Well, I appreciate you guys, and hey, listen, all you guys who have been following me, who came over to this live from that Gen X video that kind of blew up. I didn't expect it to blow up, by the way. I can't tell you how fucking humbled I am. Actually, I'm just gonna do TikTok for a little while. I'll see you guys later. Bye, Periscope. You guys come back over to TikTok if you guys want to chit chat. We're gonna talk about cult psychology. That's a good one. What's the other one called? Mob mentality. Yeah, cult psychology and mob mentality. We can go into that about how the greater number of people. I mean, it's the bandwagon effect, right? If everybody thinks it, yeah, group thing. Everybody thinks it must be right. I like that. Turnberry, keep at me on that one. I like that one. I'll see you guys later. But come back over here on TikTok, okay? Bye. Bye.